There's a moment that comes for everyone. You know the one I'm talking about. That moment when you've been pushing for weeks, months, maybe years towards something that matters to you. You've sacrificed. You've worked when others played. You've shown up when everything in your body screamed to stay in bed. And then one day, you wake up and the weight of it all crashes down on you at once. The progress is too slow. The obstacles are too many. The gap between where you are and where you want to be feels impossible to cross. And a voice in your head, quiet at first but getting louder, whispers the most seductive lie you'll ever hear. Just quit. It's okay to quit. You've tried hard enough. No one would blame you. You can start something easier. Something more realistic. Something that doesn't hurt this much. And in that moment, everything hangs in the balance. Because what you do in the next 5 minutes will determine whether you look back on your life with pride or with regret. Whether you become someone who achieved what they set out to do or someone who almost did. Whether you join the tiny percentage of people who actually finish what they start or the vast majority who gave up right before the breakthrough. In 1604, Miyamoto Musashi stood in a cave in the mountains of Japan, shivering in the darkness. He had been there for 3 weeks. No fire. No blanket. No company. Just him, the cold, and the sword techniques he was drilling 8 hours a day with nobody watching. His body was exhausted. His hands were bleeding from gripping the wooden sword. His mind was screaming at him to leave, to return to civilization, to stop this insane pursuit of perfection that nobody else seemed to think was necessary. He had already won 40 duels. He was already famous. He was already recognized as one of the best swordsmen in Japan. What was the point of this suffering? What was the point of pushing beyond what was already enough? And then he remembered something his first teacher had told him when he was a child. A single word that would define the rest of his life. Ganbaru. It's a Japanese concept that has no direct translation in English, but it means something like persist with patience, endure with dignity, keep going even when every logical reason says to stop. Not because you're stubborn. Not because you're foolish. But because you understand something that quitters will never understand. The moment you most want to quit is the moment right before transformation happens. You're watching this video because you're in that moment right now. Or you've been in it recently. Or you know it's coming. You're tired. You're doubting yourself. You're looking at other people who seem to have it easier and wondering why your path has to be so hard. You're calculating how much more you have to endure and the number feels crushing. You're thinking about all the ways you could justify quitting to yourself, to others, to that part of you that just wants the pain to stop. And here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. That voice telling you to quit is not wisdom. It's not your intuition protecting you. It's not reality giving you important information. That voice is your biology trying to keep you safe. It's an ancient part of your brain that evolved to conserve energy, avoid risk, and keep you comfortable. And it is the enemy of everything great you could become. Because every single person who has ever achieved something worth achieving had to ignore that voice. Every single person who has ever done something that mattered had to push through that moment when quitting felt like the only reasonable option. The difference between people you admire and people you forget is not talent. It's not luck. It's not circumstances. It's Ganbaru. It's the willingness to persist when persistence seems pointless. Before I show you exactly how to access Ganbaru in your darkest moments, and more importantly, how Musashi used this principle to transform himself from a good swordsman into an undefeated legend, I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel and hit that like button. Not because I need the numbers, but because you need the reminder. Every video on this channel is designed to give you the tools to push through when everything in you wants to stop. And I need you to comment right now with this exact phrase. I want to quit, and then finish that sentence honestly. What do you want to quit? What are you struggling with right now? What feels too hard, too slow, too impossible? It could be, I want to quit my business because it's not growing fast enough. Or, I want to quit my fitness goals because I'm not seeing results. Or, I want to quit trying to change because I keep falling back into old patterns. Whatever it is, write it down. Because when you name the thing you want to quit publicly, when you make it visible, something shifts. The shame loses its power. The isolation breaks. And you realize thousands of other people are fighting the exact same battle. So do it now. Comment. I want to quit, finish the sentence, and let's face this together. Let's begin. The first thing you need to understand about Ganbaru is that it's not about motivation. Motivation is what gets you started. Motivation is that burst of energy you feel when you first commit to something. Motivation is useful, but it's also completely unreliable. It comes and goes based on your mood, your circumstances, your brain chemistry on any given day. And if you're depending on motivation to keep going, you've already lost. Because motivation will absolutely abandon you right when you need it most. It will disappear the moment things get hard. It will evaporate the second you stop seeing immediate results. Ganbaru is something entirely different. Ganbaru is a decision you make once, deeply, completely, and then you simply execute that decision every day regardless of how you feel. It's not an emotion. It's a commitment. It's a non-negotiable contract with yourself that says, I will continue until this is done, and my feelings about it are irrelevant. When Musashi was training in that cave, he was not motivated. He was miserable. He was cold, hungry, exhausted, and alone. Every cell in his body was begging him to stop. But motivation was never the question. He had made a decision years earlier that he would become the greatest swordsman who ever lived. Not because it would be fun. Not because it would be easy. But because it was what he had chosen. And once that decision was made, truly made at a level deeper than conscious thought, everything else became simple. Not easy. Simple. Every day he woke up and trained because that's what someone pursuing his goal does. The weather did not matter. His mood did not matter. His comfort did not matter. The decision had been made, and he was simply executing it. That's Ganbaru. That's the difference between people who achieve extraordinary things and people who start strong and fade. The achievers made a real decision. The faders made a wish and called it a decision. Here's how you know if you've made a real decision or just a wish. A real decision has no exit strategy. A wish always has a backup plan. A real decision says, I will do this or die trying. A wish says, I'll try this and see how it goes. A real decision eliminates all other options. A wish keeps other options open in case this doesn't work out. And your brain knows the difference. When you make a wish, your brain stays in negotiation mode. It's constantly evaluating whether continuing is worth it. It's constantly looking for reasons to quit. It's constantly measuring your feelings against the difficulty and asking if you really want to keep going. But when you make a real decision, your brain shifts into execution mode. It stops asking whether and starts focusing on how. It stops debating and starts doing. The internal conversation ends, and what remains is simply action. That's the state Musashi lived in. That's the state you need to access if you want to stop quitting things that matter. But here's the problem most people face when they try to make a real decision. They confuse the decision with the goal. They think the decision is, I will lose 50 pounds, or I will build $1 million business, or I will become a black belt. But those are outcomes, not decisions. You cannot decide outcomes because outcomes depend on factors outside your control. What you can decide is process. You can decide, I will train 5 days a week for the next 2 years regardless of results. You can decide, I will work on my business every single day for 12 months regardless of revenue. You can decide, I will practice this skill for 1 hour daily for the next 5 years regardless of recognition. Those are real decisions because they're entirely within your control. And when you make a real decision about process, something magical happens. The outcomes start taking care of themselves. Because consistency over time, applied with focus and adjusted with feedback, produces results in any domain. But you never get that consistency if you're constantly reevaluating based on feelings. Let me tell you about someone who understood this perfectly. There's a writer I know who decided she would write 1,000 words every single day for 5 years. Not publish every day. Not write good words every day. Just write 1,000 words. No exceptions. No negotiations. It did not matter if she was sick. It did not matter if she was traveling. It did not matter if she had written complete garbage the day before. Every single day, 1,000 words. And for the first year, almost everything she wrote was terrible. She knew it was terrible. But she kept writing because the decision was not about quality. The decision was about process. Second year, the quality started improving, but nobody cared. She sent pitches to magazines and got rejected constantly. But she kept writing because the decision was not about external validation. The decision was about process. Third year, she started getting some acceptances. Small publications. No money. But evidence that she was improving. Fourth year, she published her first book. It sold moderately well. Nothing spectacular. Fifth year, she published her second book and it became a bestseller. Now she's a successful author with multiple books and a thriving career. And people look at her success and think she's talented or lucky. But I know the truth. She made one decision 5 years ago and executed it every single day regardless of feelings, regardless of results, regardless of external feedback. That's Ganbaru. That's what it looks like in modern life. Now let's talk about what happens in your mind during the moment you want to quit. Because if you understand the mechanism, you can interrupt it. Here's what's actually happening. Your brain is running a calculation. It's measuring the pain of continuing against the pain of quitting. And in that moment, the pain of continuing feels massive and immediate. Your body is tired. Your emotions are raw. Your mind is exhausted from the sustained effort. All of that is right here, right now, undeniable. But the pain of quitting feels distant and abstract. Sure, you might regret it later. Sure, you might wonder what could have been. Sure, you might feel like a failure. But that's future pain, and your brain discounts future pain heavily compared to immediate pain. So the calculation seems obvious. Quit now, feel relief immediately, deal with regret later if it even comes. This is the trap. This is the moment where most people's dreams go to die. Because they make a permanent decision based on temporary pain. Musashi understood this trap better than anyone. He knew that in the moment of maximum difficulty, his mind would try to convince him that quitting was reasonable. So he developed a practice that saved him every single time. When the voice came, when his body screamed to stop, when his mind presented all the logical reasons why continuing was pointless, he would pause and ask himself one question. Will I regret quitting more than I'm suffering right now? And he would sit with that question. Really sit with it. Not answer it immediately with whatever his emotions wanted to hear. But imagine both futures. The future where he quit and the future where he persisted. He would visualize himself 1 year later having quit. How would he feel? What would he tell himself? Would he be proud of the decision or haunted by it? Then he would visualize himself 1 year later having pushed through. Even if the results were not what he hoped, even if the journey was harder than expected, would he respect himself for continuing? And every single time he did this exercise, the answer was clear. The temporary pain of continuing was nothing compared to the permanent pain of quitting. So he continued. And that simple practice, repeated hundreds of times over his life, is why he never quit anything that mattered. You can use this exact practice right now. Whatever you're struggling with, whatever you want to quit, pause and run this simulation. Imagine yourself 1 year from now having quit. Really visualize it. You're sitting somewhere, maybe alone, maybe with friends, and someone asks what happened to that thing you were working on. What do you say? How do you feel when you explain that you quit? Do you feel relieved? Or do you feel a hollow ache in your chest? Do you feel at peace? Or do you feel like you abandoned a part of yourself? Be honest. Don't lie to make yourself feel better. Really feel what that future feels like. Then imagine the other path. Imagine yourself 1 year from now having pushed through. Maybe you achieved the goal. Maybe you're still working toward it. Maybe the results are different than you expected. But you kept going. You did not quit. When you look at yourself in the mirror in that future, what do you see? Someone who gave up when things got hard? Or someone who proved to themselves they can endure? Which version of yourself do you want to meet a year from now? And right here, I need to pause and ask you something crucial. Because I know thousands of people are watching this, And I know many of you are right on the edge. You're one bad day away from quitting something that could change your life. So I need to know what's really going on. Go to the comments right now and type this exact phrase. The hardest part of not quitting is, and then finish that sentence with brutal honesty. What makes it so hard to keep going? Is it the lack of visible progress? Is it the loneliness of the journey? Is it the constant doubt? Is it watching others succeed faster? Is it the exhaustion of showing up every day with no guarantee it will work? Whatever it is, write it down. Because here's what will happen. First, you'll see dozens or hundreds of people who wrote almost exactly what you wrote. And you'll realize the struggle you think is uniquely yours is actually universally human. That knowledge alone will give you strength. Second, by naming the hardest part, you've taken it out of the shadows where it feels overwhelming and put it in the light where you can actually work with it. And third, I read every comment, and the most common struggles become the foundation for future videos where I give you specific tools to overcome exactly what you're facing. So do it now. Scroll down. Type, the hardest part of not quitting is, finish it honestly, and hit post. This is not just engagement. This is you refusing to suffer in silence. Do it now. Now let's talk about the second dimension of Ganbaru that Musashi mastered. It's not just about persisting. It's about persisting with dignity. There's a way to keep going that's desperate, that's grasping, that's full of resentment and bitterness. That's not Ganbaru. That's just stubbornness. Ganbaru is different. Ganbaru is continuing with grace. It's showing up every day without complaint. It's doing the work without announcing how hard it is. It's maintaining your composure even when you're struggling internally. It's refusing to make your difficulty everyone else's problem. This distinction matters because how you persist determines what you become. If you persist with bitterness, you might achieve your goal but you'll become someone angry and resentful. If you persist with dignity, you achieve your goal and you become someone strong and respectable. The outcome might be the same. The person who achieves it is completely different. Musashi demonstrated this throughout his life. During his most difficult training periods, he never complained. He never sought sympathy. He never made excuses. When people saw him after months of isolation and intense practice, he did not tell them how hard it had been. He simply showed them what he had become. This was not pride or stoicism for its own sake. This was understanding that dignity during difficulty is what forges character. Easy times do not build you. How you handle hard times builds you. And if you handle hard times by complaining, by making excuses, by seeking pity, you're building a weak character even if you eventually succeed. But if you handle hard times with quiet persistence, with grace under pressure, with dignity in difficulty, you're building the kind of character that can handle anything life throws at you. Here's what this looks like practically. Right now, you're struggling with something. You have two choices in how you carry that struggle. You can tell everyone how hard it is. You can post on social media about your challenges. You can seek validation and sympathy from others. You can make sure everyone knows you're fighting and suffering and barely holding on. And there's nothing inherently wrong with seeking support. But there's a difference between genuine connection and using your struggle as a way to get attention. There's a difference between asking for help and performing your difficulty for an audience. Ganbaru says keep your struggle mostly private. Tell 1 or 2 people you trust. Get the support you actually need. But don't broadcast it. Don't make your persistence a performance. Just do the work quietly, consistently, with dignity. And when you finally break through, when you finally achieve what you've been working toward, let the results speak for themselves. That's how you build real strength. That's how you become someone others respect not just for what you achieved but for how you achieved it. There's a third element of Ganbaru that's crucial and most people miss entirely. It's about finding meaning in the struggle itself, not just in the outcome. Most people persist because they want the reward at the end. They want the money, the recognition, the feeling of accomplishment, the body, the relationship, whatever the goal represents. And that external motivation can carry you for a while. But eventually, if the only reason you're persisting is for the outcome, you will quit. Because outcomes are never guaranteed. You can do everything right and still not get the result you want. You can work for years and circumstances beyond your control can destroy your progress. You can give everything and still fall short. And if your only reason for continuing was the outcome, then when the outcome feels uncertain, you have no reason to continue. But Ganbaru is not outcome dependent. Ganbaru finds meaning in the persistence itself. It says, I persist not just because I want the result, but because persisting is who I am. I continue not just because I might achieve the goal, but because continuing reveals something important about my character. Musashi understood this deeply. He did not train obsessively because he wanted to win duels. He had already won dozens of duels. He trained obsessively because the training itself was meaningful. It was how he understood himself. It was how he expressed his values. It was how he honored the path he had chosen. The duels were almost irrelevant. The training was the point. And when you make that shift, when you find meaning in the process rather than just the outcome, everything changes. You're no longer dependent on results to validate your effort. You're no longer fragile to setbacks because setbacks do not change the meaning of what you're doing. You become genuinely unbreakable because your reason for continuing exists regardless of external circumstances. You continue because continuing is an expression of who you are, not a strategy to get something you want. Let me show you how to make this shift. Whatever you're working on right now, ask yourself this question. If I knew for certain I would never achieve the outcome I want, would this process still be worth doing? Really sit with that. If you knew your business would never become profitable, would building it still teach you things worth learning? If you knew you would never win the championship, would the training still make you a better person? If you knew you would never get the recognition you want, would the work still have value? If the answer is no, then you're in trouble. Because you've tied your persistence to something outside your control. And the moment that outcome feels impossible, you'll quit. But if the answer is yes, if you can find genuine meaning in the process independent of the outcome, then you've accessed real Ganbaru. Then you've become someone who persists not because you have to, but because you choose to. Not because you're chasing something, but because you're expressing something. That's the shift that makes you unquittable. Now let's talk about what to do in the actual moment when you want to quit. Because all of this philosophy is useful, but in that moment, in that acute crisis where you're about to give up, you need something immediate and practical. Here's the technique Musashi used and you can use right now. He called it the breath of persistence. It's incredibly simple but devastatingly effective. When you want to quit, when the voice is loudest, when you're about to make the decision to stop, do this. Take 10 deep breaths. That's it. Just 10 breaths where you focus entirely on the physical sensation of breathing. Nothing else. Not thinking about why you should continue. Not arguing with the voice. Not trying to motivate yourself. Just breathing. And after those 10 breaths, if you still want to quit, allow yourself to quit. No judgment. No shame. Just quit. But you must complete the 10 breaths first. Here's why this works. In the moment you want to quit, you're not thinking clearly. You're in an emotional state where your decision-making is compromised. Your amygdala is activated. Your prefrontal cortex is suppressed. You're making a permanent decision from a temporary emotional state. The 10 breaths do something crucial. They create space. They interrupt the automatic pattern. They shift you out of pure emotional reaction and back into a state where your rational mind can participate in the decision. And what you'll find almost every single time is that after those 10 breaths, the acute crisis has passed. The voice is still there, but it's quieter. The desire to quit is still there, but it's not overwhelming. And from that slightly calmer state, you can make a better decision. Not necessarily to continue forever, but to continue for one more day, one more hour, one more session. And that's all you need. Because persistence is not about committing to continue forever. It's about committing to continue right now, and then making that same commitment again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. Each time, just one more day. That's Ganbaru. That's how you persist when persistence feels impossible. I've used this technique hundreds of times. Days when I woke up and absolutely did not want to train, did not want to write, did not want to show up for responsibilities I had committed to. And the voice was loud. The justifications were convincing. The desire to quit was real. But I would take 10 breaths. And after those 10 breaths, I would ask myself, can I do just one more day? Not can I do this forever. Not can I do this until I achieve my goal. Just can I do one more day? And the answer was always yes. Not because I suddenly felt motivated, but because one more day is manageable even when forever feels impossible. So I would do one more day. And the next morning, I would do it again. 10 breaths. One more day. And eventually, those days accumulated into weeks, into months, into years. And the things I thought about quitting became the things I'm most proud of. Not because they were easy, but because I did not quit when everything in me wanted to. You can do the same thing right now. Whatever you're struggling with, whatever you want to quit, commit to just one more day. Not one more year. Not until you achieve the goal. Just one more day. Can you do that? Can you show up one more time? Can you complete one more session? Can you make one more attempt? Of course you can. Anyone can do one more day. The power is not in the single day. The power is in the decision to keep making that commitment daily. That's the secret. That's how people achieve things that seem impossible. They do not achieve them all at once. They achieve them one day at a time, by refusing to quit today and then making that same decision again tomorrow. It's not dramatic. It's not inspirational. It's just effective. And if you do this, if you genuinely commit to the 10 breaths and one more day approach, you will be stunned by what you can accomplish over time. But here's the final truth about Ganbaru that I need you to understand. There will come a time, maybe multiple times, where you do everything right and you still fail. Where you persist with dignity, where you find meaning in the process, where you commit to one more day for years, and the outcome you wanted does not happen. The business fails. The relationship ends. The goal proves impossible. And in that moment, you will face a choice. You can let that failure define you as someone who wasted years on something that did not work. Or you can recognize that Ganbaru was never about the outcome. It was about who you became through the persistence. Did you become someone who can endure? Did you become someone who keeps their word to themselves? Did you become someone who faces difficulty with dignity? Did you become someone who finds meaning in struggle? If yes, then you did not fail. You succeeded at something far more important than the original goal. You succeeded at building an unbreakable character. And that character will serve you in every area of your life for the rest of your life. Musashi lost things throughout his life. He lost relationships. He lost comforts. He lost years of his life to solitary training that most people would consider wasted. But he never lost himself. He never quit on the person he was becoming. And at the end of his life, when he wrote the Book of 5 Rings and looked back on everything he had endured, everything he had sacrificed, everything he had persisted through, he had no regrets. Not because everything worked out perfectly, but because he had lived with Ganbaru. He had persisted with dignity. He had become someone worthy of his own respect. That's the real victory. That's what makes all the struggle worth it. Not the external achievements, though those often come, but the internal transformation. The knowledge that when life tested you, you did not break. You did not quit. You persisted. And that persistence forged you into someone stronger than you ever could have become through an easy path. So where does this leave you? You're facing something difficult right now. Something that makes you want to quit. And you have a decision to make. Not about whether you'll achieve the outcome. You cannot control that. But about whether you'll persist with dignity. Whether you'll find meaning in the struggle. Whether you'll commit to one more day. That decision will echo through the rest of your life. Because what you do in this moment of difficulty is teaching you who you are. If you quit, you learn that when things get hard, you stop. And that lesson will repeat in every future challenge. But if you persist, if you access Ganbaru, if you continue with dignity even when every logical reason says to stop, you learn something different. You learn that you are someone who can endure. Someone who keeps commitments even when they're difficult. Someone who persists not because it's easy but because it's who you choose to be. And that lesson becomes the foundation for everything else you'll achieve in life. 5 years from now, you will look back on this moment. And you will either see it as the time you gave up, or the time you decided to become unquittable. Which memory do you want to have? Which version of yourself do you want to meet 5 years from now? The one who quit when it got hard, or the one who discovered they were capable of far more than they ever imagined? That future is being created right now. This moment. This decision. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Right now. So what are you going to do? If you made it this far, if you're still here, then you're ready for the commitment. So I need you to do 3 things right now. First, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Every video I create is designed to give you one more tool to persist when everything tells you to quit. You will need those reminders. Second, hit that like button so this reaches other people who are fighting to not give up. Your engagement literally saves someone else who's about to quit. And third, comment right now with this statement. I commit to one more day of, and then finish that sentence with what you're persisting in. Not one more year. Not until you succeed. Just one more day. It could be, I commit to one more day of building my business. Or, I commit to one more day of training for my goal. Or, I commit to one more day of working on myself. Whatever it is, declare it. Make it public. Make it real. Because when you make that commitment visible, when you share it with this community, something shifts. You're not alone anymore. You're part of a group of people who refuse to quit, who understand that persistence is not about feeling ready. It's about doing it anyway. So comment now. Declare your one more day. And tomorrow, come back and declare it again. And the day after. And the day after that. One day at a time, we're all becoming people our former selves would not recognize. People who do not quit. People who embody Ganbaru. Do it now. Subscribe. Comment. And let's persist together. Thank you for being here. Thank you for not quitting yet. Now go do one more day. Just one more. You can do that. I know you can.